Have you ever wondered what became of the dazzling stars who once owned the red carpet? Time has a way of humbling even Hollywood's most legendary faces. In this countdown, you'll be stunned at how dramatically these celebrities have changed, especially number 7, which might just make you do a double take. So, buckle up as we reveal 15 iconic names who've undergone jaw-dropping transformations over the years. Chevy Chase's journey from comedy royalty to Hollywood pariah remains one of the most staggering falls from grace in show business. In the 1970s and 80s, he wasn't just funny, he was untouchable. As a founding star of Saturday Night Live, Chase became the face of American sketch comedy, parlaying that fame into a blockbuster film career with hits like Caddyshack, Fletch, and the National Lampoon's Vacation series. Tall, handsome, and armed with razor-sharp timing, he was a rare breed, a comedic leading man who could sell out theaters and still look like he belonged on a magazine cover. At his peak, Chase commanded $7 million a film, a staggering payday for the era. His pratfalls, smirks, and quick-fire wit became trademarks, symbols of a man who always landed on his feet. But behind the charm, a darker reputation was taking shape. His early departure from SNL, after just one season, was the first crack in the facade, leading to a now legendary backstage brawl with Bill Murray, who infamously dismissed him as medium talent, a barb that would haunt him for decades. As his career advanced, so did the whispers, and then the headlines, about his toxic behavior. On the set of Community, Chase clashed with co-stars and was accused of racially insensitive remarks toward Donald Glover. Creator Dan Harmon recalled him pushing the limits of decency, testing boundaries with offensive jokes. Female colleagues told stories of crude comments and casual dismissal of their input, painting a portrait of a man who wielded his fame like a weapon. Time hasn't been kind to him either. Once the picture of comedic athleticism, Chase, now 81, is almost unrecognizable, his once chiseled face bloated, posture stooped, movement stiff. The easy grin that once disarmed audiences often curls into a sneer. The confident stride has slowed to a weary shuffle. His voice, once crisp and commanding, now trembles and strains. Each public appearance feels like a mirror of his career, diminished, weighed down by years of excess, and marked by burned bridges. Even when Hollywood handed him lifelines, he seemed determined to cut them. His role on Community could have been a renaissance, introducing him to a new generation. Instead, he alienated cast and crew, eventually walking away, and later calling the show a big mistake in a 2018 Washington Post profile, effectively setting fire to one of his last remaining chances at redemption. Chevy Chase's story isn't just about the rise and fall of a comedy legend. It's a cautionary tale of how arrogance can turn applause into silence. Courtney Love, the wild, untamed face of 90s grunge, has paid a brutal price for a life lived on the edge. As the fiery frontwoman of Hole and the widow of Kurt Cobain, she once embodied pure, unfiltered rock and roll chaos, a magnetic mix of beauty and danger that felt both intoxicating and unpredictable. But decades of well-documented drug use, erratic outbursts, and public meltdowns have taken their toll. Now 60, the woman who once set stages ablaze bears a face etched with the scars of her past, a blend of natural aging, the accelerated wear of self-destruction, and the unmistakable signs of cosmetic attempts to turn back the clock. Her once electric image has dimmed, replaced by tabloid headlines about online feuds, emotional breakdowns, and a painful rift with her daughter, Frances Bean Cobain. There have been flashes of sobriety, fleeting returns to the spotlight, and moments where it seemed she might reclaim her former glory. But the broader arc has been one of decline, a cautionary tale of what happens when rock's seductive chaos becomes a lifelong companion. The contrast is stark. The fierce, captivating young woman who once ruled the stage is now a living reminder that surviving the storm doesn't mean you escape its wreckage. Courtney Love outlived the chaos, but it left its fingerprints all over her face, her career, and her relationships. Lindsay Lohan. Few young stars have crashed so spectacularly and so publicly before our eyes. In the early 2000s, she was Hollywood's golden girl, a gifted teen with razor-sharp comedic timing in Mean Girls and Freaky Friday, destined for decades of stardom. But instead of a long, glittering career, she became the face of one of Tinseltown's most infamous meltdowns. The tabloids documented every stumble: multiple DUI arrests, failed drug tests, stints in jail, all played out under a relentless, unforgiving spotlight. Her transformation was as shocking as it was swift. Mugshots showed the toll: a once radiant face now bloated, lined, and clouded with the unmistakable marks of addiction. By her late 20s, Lohan looked years older than her age. Attempts to reverse the damage through cosmetic procedures left her with an unnaturally tight, almost mask-like appearance that clashed against her roughened skin tone. Her career unraveled into a string of forgettable roles and missed opportunities. In recent years, she sought redemption, moving to Dubai, choosing work more carefully, and making visible strides toward stability. Yet the shadows of those chaotic years remain etched across her features. Now 38, she appears older than many actresses in their 50s, her face telling the unflinching truth of a youth burned too quickly. Her story is more than gossip fodder. It's a cautionary tale of how swiftly innocence and promise can be devoured by the pressures of early fame. Marlon Brando's fall from grace remains one of the most shocking and heartbreaking stories in Hollywood history. His decline wasn't simply the passage of time. It was the slow unraveling of a man who had once reshaped the very art of acting. In the 1950s, Brando exploded onto the screen with raw, intuitive performances in A Streetcar Named Desire and On the Waterfront. With his chiseled features, smoldering intensity, and unshakable magnetism, he redefined masculinity for a generation and became the gold standard for actors everywhere. But by the 1970s, even as he delivered unforgettable work in The Godfather, the cracks began to show. His once sculpted frame gave way to dramatic weight gain. The fame and power he'd earned granted him total control on set, and he wielded it recklessly. During Apocalypse Now, he arrived overweight, unprepared, and issued strange, erratic demands. On the island of Dr. Moreau, his bizarre behavior, like wearing an ice bucket on his head, became legendary for all the wrong reasons. Off-screen, his personal life was no less turbulent. Heartbreak struck with his son's conviction for murder and his daughter's tragic suicide, wounds from which he never fully recovered. In his final years, Brando retreated into isolation on his Tahitian island, a shadow of the electric, fearless force he once was. His legacy, once defined by brilliance and daring, became clouded by excess, eccentricity, and sorrow, an extraordinary rise followed by a tragic descent. O.J. Simpson. Few public figures have ever plummeted from glory with such speed and severity. Once the embodiment of the American dream, Simpson wasn't just a record-breaking NFL superstar, he was a crossover sensation. He glided from the gridiron to Hollywood, became a charismatic TV personality, and fronted major brands with an easy charm that broke barriers for African-American athletes. Those Hertz commercials, showing him sprinting effortlessly through crowded airports, became an indelible image of the 1970s, his grin as famous as his game. But that golden image would shatter. Over the years, the adored sports hero became one of America's most infamous pariahs. The transformation was as physical as it was reputational. The chiseled physique gave way to a bloated, weary frame during his years behind bars for armed robbery and kidnapping. Mugshots replaced magazine covers, showing sagging features and a hollow stare. By the time he walked out of prison in 2017, shuffling with a cane, the man who once symbolized speed and strength had been reduced to a shadow of himself. Yet it wasn't age or prison that delivered the deepest blow. It was the destruction of his public identity. Though acquitted in criminal court, the civil verdict finding him liable for the wrongful deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman forever stained his name. O.J. Simpson's fall from beloved icon to cultural exile remains one of the most stunning reversals in pop culture history, a cautionary tale of how swiftly the mighty can fall. Steven Seagal. Few Hollywood falls from grace have been as dramatic, or as seemingly self-inflicted, as his. In the late 1980s and early 90s, Seagal was action movie royalty, a martial arts master with an icy glare, a sleek black ponytail, and lightning-fast Aikido moves that turned films like Under Siege and Hard to Kill into box office gold. He wasn't just an actor, he was a larger-than-life persona, commanding some of the highest paychecks in the business. But time has not been kind. Today, Seagal is almost unrecognizable, both in looks and in legacy. Viral photos spark shock and disbelief, fans struggling to reconcile the lean, lethal figure of the past with the man he's become. The transformation is stark, the once agile frame now burdened with more than 100 extra pounds, the legendary ponytail still clinging to its jet black sheen, but now more costume than calling card. At 72, his movements are slow, his face swollen, his martial arts bravado ringing hollow. And then there's the damage beyond the mirror, accusations of on-set bullying, sexual misconduct, and eyebrow-raising political alliances. Together, they have recast Seagal not as the untouchable action icon he once was, but as a living cautionary tale of ego, excess, and the peril of refusing to let go of the past. Axl Rose, once the magnetic, untamed voice of Guns N' Roses, has endured one of the most startling declines in rock history. In the late 80s, he wasn't just a frontman, he was rock's living storm, lean, explosive, and electrifying crowds with a voice that could leap from a deep growl to a glass-shattering scream across 5 octaves. With his serpentine dance moves, trademark bandanas, fiery red hair, and raw charisma, Rose didn't just sing rock's rebellious spirit, he embodied it. But time has not been kind. The wild mane has thinned, the once chiseled face now puffy and older than his years. Most heartbreaking for fans is the loss of that legendary voice. The same voice that once tore through Welcome to the Jungle and Sweet Child O' Mine like an untamed beast. Today, the soaring notes are often carried by backup singers, while Rose himself strains to capture echoes of his former glory. His reputation for being difficult, once fueled by perfectionism, only deepened over the years, morphing into mistrust and volatility. Former bandmates recall a man whose behavior became more unstable, whose penchant for delaying or canceling shows turned him into a headline for the wrong reasons. Yet, in rare flashes of honesty, Rose has acknowledged the fall. After one particularly rough performance, he admitted on Twitter, "I know I'm not the singer I used to be." For a man once untouchable in his confidence, it was a crack in the armor. Watching old footage of the fireball who once ruled the stage alongside more recent clips, where he moves cautiously, his voice weathered and tired, is sobering. Unlike other rock legends who've adapted their style to fit their aging voices, Rose appears locked in a losing battle against time itself. For fans, it's a bittersweet struggle to reconcile the mythical icon they remember with the man still standing under the same spotlight, chasing ghosts of a voice that once shook the world. Terrence Howard's journey from Hollywood's golden boy to one of its most puzzling outsiders stands as one of the most bizarre falls from grace in modern film history. In the early 2000s, he seemed unstoppable, earning an Academy Award nomination for Hustle and Flow and stepping into the Marvel Cinematic Universe as James Rhodes in the very first Iron Man. It was a role that many believed would lock in his place among Hollywood's elite for years to come. But Howard's downfall wasn't driven by the natural fade of youth, though stress has carved deep lines into his once smooth features. Instead, it was a storm of erratic behavior, cryptic public statements, and behind-the-scenes clashes that slowly pushed him out of the limelight. He famously lost his Marvel role amid reports of financial disputes and volatile on-set conduct, a blow that marked the beginning of a long, public unraveling. Over the years, his name became tied to bitter divorces, legal battles, and unsettling allegations of domestic abuse. Yet, perhaps most damaging were his baffling interviews, where he dropped claims like 1 × 1 is equal to 2, statements that left fans and industry insiders questioning his grasp on reality. His role on Empire gave him a brief comeback, but it was quickly overshadowed by his public vow to retire so he could unveil a new system of logic, a move that only deepened his estrangement from mainstream projects. Today, at 55, Howard looks far older than his years, worn down by decades of controversy and personal turmoil. The contrast between the magnetic leading man once destined for legendary status and the eccentric figure he has become is a haunting reminder of just how quickly Hollywood can turn its back when promise is squandered. Thanks for watching Exposed Hollywood. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next deep dive. Stay tuned, we'll see you in the next video.